Welcome to the Beauty and Ruin podcast. This is David Starr coming to you from high in the Colorado mountains. And this morning I've got my good friend and producer John Oates on the phone. How are you, John?
David, I am doing pretty well under the circumstances, and it is a beautiful day in Nashville, and trying to get outside a little bit and get some fresh air occasionally, but things are pretty good.
Good. Well, I know you still have interests in Colorado, so we had a good rainstorm this morning, so everything's greened up nicely. Yeah.
Finally getting warm out there, too, I hear,
Yeah. So I know that Hall & Oates got off to a pretty good start with 2 dates for their tour in the end of February, and then everything sort of unceremoniously came to a screeching halt. So I know your last gig was Madison Square Garden, which not many of us can say that.
How about it's almost like our first gig and our last gig was Madison Square
Well, if it all ended tomorrow, that would be a good one to go out on. But tell us what you've been doing during the pandemic. I know you've been busy because I've been seeing you on online a lot.
Well, Amy and I have been really trying to up our game when it comes to our social media presence, so on Instagram and YouTube and all that. We realize it's a great way to communicate with people and stay in touch, both professionally and personally. So we've been doing that, and I've been learning a lot about that. Had a chance to reconfigure my home's writing studio, which I had something I've always wanted to do and never had the time. It was always a little more convenient to just go to the pro studio with David Kalmusky at Addiction and have him take care of the engineering work. But since I've been home, I kind of got my MIDI keyboard out and upped my game on GarageBand and, did a bunch of things like that. Did a lot of reading, rediscovered J.D. Salinger. Yeah. Wrote a ton of songs. So, as I said, I'm pretty darn busy.
Good. Well, like you mentioned the social media thing. I've been seeing you on there quite a bit, and I know in years past you and I have talked about sort of our love-hate relationship with social media, but it's sort of coming to its own as a way to communicate with the with fans and all that sort of thing. So, and I've noticed you doing a lot of things that involve charities and causes in the Nashville area. So. That seems like a good thing to do as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's been people have been reaching out on charitable and socially conscious requests from all over the country, from all over the world, for that matter.
Yeah.
So I've been trying to do as much as I can because it's a small thing for me to do that hopefully can benefit a lot of people. We just did a big fundraiser for Philadelphia musicians.
Right.
Of course, we've done few things for Music Cares here in Nashville, and there's a couple things in the UK that we've been doing as well. So with Americana UK, so I mean, here again, anything we can do to help, I'm on board.
Good. I know the last live gig I played that wasn't in my home studio online was at the Station Inn the night after the big tornado in East Nashville, and so.
That's right.
It seems like Nashville's really. I mean, everybody's got a rough time right now, but Nashville's really gotten hammered with the storms, and gosh, it just seems like it's relentless. But
it has. We just had a very freak thing happen here just last week. It's known as a derecho, which is a urban hurricane, inland hurricane.
I had to look that one up. I'd never heard of that.
So did we. We didn't know what it was either. But we had hurricane winds that came through our the west end, pretty much the west end of Nashville, and huge trees down. We had 2 huge 100-year-old trees down on either side of our driveway. So even though we were very fortunate and didn't have any damage at our house, we literally couldn't leave for about 4 days. So because we couldn't, we could pull out to our driveway, but we couldn't go down the street.
Wow.
So it took about a week to get power and then another few days to get, our internet back online. So yeah, we were out of power for it. So Amy and I were back to the 1800s there for a little bit, in our kind of way. So.
Well, I've been to your house. It's not the worst place to be trapped. It's my
No. I'm not complaining.
My wife was trapped on the island of Kauai for almost 8 weeks, and anytime I told anyone that, they said, "Oh, poor Cindy." But
poor Cindy, right?
Anytime you can't go where you want to go, then you feel trapped. So.
Well, I think we get spoiled,
Sure.
especially, here in America. We get spoiled. we're people who feel like we have unlimited possibilities
Yep.
on every level of our lives. And when those things become when that changes, it's really I think Americans are a bit spoiled when it comes to that.
Well, I know that I've had to sort of look at, we got this, and we'll talk about the album in a few minutes, but the album that you and I worked on, I'd just gotten out and begun touring that and was getting really good response to the book and the project and the whole concept, and then everything stops, and you have to kind of rethink, well, what's my next move? But I think what you're doing and what a lot of guys I see online are doing is just hunkering down and trying to reach fans, because that's what it's about anyway. Me at night, as I toss my head on a fever bed, praying for the light.
Yeah, and I think in a way, this situation is going to have ongoing ramifications as we go forward, because I think people have realized that they've embraced the ability to interact, online and digitally and virtually. And I think that's not actually going to stop. I mean, hopefully we go back to a bit more of a normal, way of life soon. But in the meantime, I think it's opened the gates for people to accept this new way of communicating and this new way of doing business.
Right. Well, speaking of that, I know you and Daryl were like I said, you were off to a great start with your tour, and you had Squeeze opening and KT Tunstall on a lot of dates.
Yeah,
so that was going to be such a killer tour, because I know you were excited about both of those acts and just getting out with that band that you've got. What since you're in the industry on a level that a lot of us aren't, what do you hear about the future of touring and when that might resume on some sort of a normal scale?
Well, just like everything, it's day to day, week to week.
Yeah.
Seeing what's happening in the world and adjusting to it.
One of the things I know that's sort of been out there, and you and I've talked about it a little bit, is the possibility of you and Daryl doing another record at some point. Is that still floating around out there?
Well, yeah, it's definitely floating, but it's floating in the ether somewhere.
Yeah.
Because that was something we were going to in between tour dates, because we don't tour constantly. We go out for a few weeks and we stop and then we go out. Anyway, he was kind of gearing up. I was gearing up. I was starting to send him some song ideas, and really, I think he and I would probably, having the history that we have, collaborative history, I think would be best for us to work together in the same room. That's where we would do our best work. So neither of us are that keen on doing the Zoom, virtual songwriting thing. So in a way, we've kind of put it on hold. But at the same time, we're both still writing individually.
Sure.
I sent him some song ideas that he seemed to like. He sent me some stuff. And so, we're ready to go. It's just a matter of, pulling the plug, I guess.
Yeah, well, get moving on to the project you and I just finished up last year is that whole, I've done writing long distance and I've done writing in the room with somebody, and there's nothing that replaces that seeing a look on somebody's face when you say something that is either really lights them up or they get that
or really bad.
Well, and I just remember when you and Jim Lauderdale and I wrote together, Jim said, this is good. He said, I can see it when John makes that face when he doesn't like something. So
Jim has always busted me on that one. He goes, he in that funny way of his, he'd always say, "You're making that face again, John."
Well, he asked me before we started that. He said, "You ever get that face?" And I said, "Well, maybe a little, but not as much, So
I apologize for that.
No.
I can't help myself. I wear my songwriting emotions on my sleeve.
Hey, if we're going down the wrong path, let's just back up and go the other way. So to bring people up to speed on this project, what it amounts to is that I gave you a book my grandfather published in '72. He died the next year. I gave you this book. I think it was on my birthday. We went to the Capitol Grill, you and Amy and Cindy and I, and as I recall, it was the night of the CMAs, and everybody had already come and gone, so there was nobody in the restaurant. And I had a copy of this book, and you took me out on my birthday, and I gave you the book, and you said, "What are we doing?" And I said, "Well, I'd like you to read the book, and you tell me if there are songs in there." And I already knew the answer to the at least the rhetorical question. And my idea was to give this book to a number of songwriters, then have everybody contribute material. fast forward to now, the album's been out since the middle of February, and a lot of good critical acclaim. People love it. We republished the book along with it. So I guess one of the things I would ask you is, just going back, what interested you about that project or this project?
Well, in a world where the album is unfortunately becoming a dying art,
Yeah.
I think. In the world of instant, playlists, people choosing, having so much music to access at any moment from any given source. The long form of an album is not going to be easy to sustain over the years. But what really appealed to me about it was this was a project, because it was based on the book and because it was such a unique idea, that it really was the perfect project for a long form album. Just as a book, as opposed to a short story or a paragraph is a longer form of expression. So that's what appealed to me initially. And of course, having, digging into the book and reading it and realizing it was so rich with imagery and the general, plot was very interesting. I like to call it kind of an Americana tale, Gothic tale of love and loss.
Yeah.
It really just seemed like the perfect vehicle for a songwriter to get inspired by, and as we all discovered, it was the songwriters who you enlisted and and ourselves. I think we really rose to the occasion. I think there's some great work on this album from the songwriting point of view. And it was really inspiring to go into a recording project with something more than just, hey, let's just make an album. Let's get 10, 11 really good songs and put them together.
Right.
This really had, it was a concept album. I hate to use that cliche because it's thrown around all the time, but it was truly a concept of writing songs inspired by this wonderful book.
Right. Well, and that's, it's interesting because, and I don't know if I ever told you this, but there was a song on the first album we worked on together was in 2017, the Head and Heart album, and the last song on there, and I remember we cut it completely live out on the floor. There are no overdubs on it. It's called Dancing with My Pride. That one came out of this book as well because I had just read the book a few, months earlier, 18 months, and that song came out of that book, sort of. I mean, it was sort of inspired by it, just the thematic thing in the book.
Mm-hmm.
So I was sort of on my way to this and didn't even know it at the time. Another question I had, and I don't know if I ever even asked you this, was did the fact that the book was involved and it was sort of a concept thing, did that change your philosophy about approaching how you produced the record, as opposed to some other record you might do?
I don't think, no. To be honest with you, I don't think that the book in any way affected my approach or colored or influenced my approach to the production, because to me, the production is always predicated on the song itself.
Right.
Once we had the material, then each song dictated how that song should be handled, from a recording, engineering, production point of view. The book was the inspiration. Once we had the songs and we had this incredible, collection of great songs, then it was all about, as the great Vince Gill told me, he said it's like being a director of a movie in Nashville. You choose the right musicians for the right moment, just like you would choose the right actor for the right part in a movie. And fortunately in Nashville, you have this incredible resource of an amazing collection of musicians. And I think also having a consistent rhythm section and, because basically it was the same guys on every song.
Almost, yeah.
Almost, except for the fiddle and the cello.
Yeah.
Basically. So that really gave it a cohesive nature, and that made these songs very, very, very coherent and cohesive.
Yeah. And that's basically the same guys we used on the album before. So I like to think that there was we didn't change much about the way we approached this record as opposed to that other one. So I think everybody came in and said, okay, we kind of know what these guys expect and what they want this to sound like. And, it's kind of cool for a guy like me who grew up wanting to be in the recording studio a lot to finally look around and there's these guys that play on everybody's records and they tour with all these people live and they just know what to do, and you don't even, I don't know, it's just, and you don't even know what you want until they do it, and then it's there,
Yeah. Well, they the quality of these studio musicians that we use, really, as you say, they are the A-team, and what they bring is they bring a wealth of experience in the studio. A lot of musicians, a lot of players, especially amateur players, they wonder why records sound the way they do and why perhaps when they have their studio experience, it doesn't quite sound the same.
Right.
And it's more than just your ability to play an instrument. It's your ability to listen. It's your ability to interact and listen not only to the songwriter and the producer and try to interpret what they're trying to get. It's also listening to the other players and how to integrate your musical instrumental part for the greater good of the whole. It's really fascinating to me. I love the process, and I love being surrounded by these high quality experienced musicians because they bring more than just their skill on their instrument, and that's what's so exciting, and so that's what makes these records have a kind of a depth and quality that goes beyond just going in there and hey guys, here's a guitar, here's a bass, here's a drum, let's play. It really it's a subtle thing that I don't think maybe the average person can even understand or relate to, but musicians certainly can.
Well, I came away in both of those instances, and then I made another record that I produced in between with a different group of guys, but they were all equally adept, and you come away with this rich experience that. And I think early on, before we ever did a record together, you said there's something to be said for that experience, and I remember that distinctly, and it stuck with me because, you come away and it's like, man, I'd do that any day, even if we didn't get a record, just to hang out with those, just sitting around at lunch with those guys and hearing the war stories about, from guys like Dan Dugmore and Greg Morrow and all those cats, So, well, let me ask you this. And you may not have listened to the record as often as I do, but one of the things that the way you and I worked on this one, and people have asked me about this, is in the case of Jubilee, the Road to Jubilee, which was, I distinctly remember when you read the book, you said, "I'll do this, but I get Jubilee." And I said, you said, "I like that name, I want that." And I said, "Okay." And that's kind of what everybody did. They all picked a thing. I try to explain to people we didn't try to do this by retelling the entire book or in any kind of chronological order. It was just pick what inspires you and write about it, and that's where I'll start. Is you and I started that one sort of together. Then we both went off, and you were touring with Hall and Oates, and I was busy. And then one day you said, "Let's get Lauderdale involved in this." So the three of us met at the studio there in Nashville and worked all day long, just bouncing things around, and. That one, I got to say, that one's about 65% yours. So, what about that inspired you? That particular one?
Well, I found that I just tend to be a rewriter.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't always do my best work, in that flush of initial inspiration. I like to marinate and sit back and absorb what happened, and then really get a new perspective, sleep on it, so to speak, and come back to it. And I always discover something that was, usually it's the obvious thing that was always there right in front of your eyes, but in the heat of the moment, perhaps you just miss it. So that's, and I do that with everything. I do that with my own songs. I do that, when I wrote my book, I did that. So that's what I felt happened. I thought that, you, Jim Lauderdale, and I we had gotten something, and we got a feel and an approach, but I didn't feel the song was crafted quite right.
Right.
And I felt there was a kind of a, and I hate to say this because it goes right back to the title. When I saw that word in the book. It was my pop sensibility that jumped out to me. It just sounded, The Road to Jubilee just sounds like a classic, great pop title. And even though we're not writing pop music, so to speak, forget about the classification. I just felt there was a pop element. There was a hook chorus element that really wasn't clarified when we wrote the song.
Right.
And that's what I think I did. I went back in, dug back in, and I said, this chorus, this refrain needs to be stronger. It sounds more anthemic. It sounds more like something that really just could be almost like a title track, so to speak,
right.
Even though it wasn't. And so that's what I did. I went back and I took everything we had done and and switched some things around, changed some chords. I tend to do that, as you know. Don't laugh.
That's okay.
And I just like to be the song doctor. I like to go back and dig in and try to fix things.
Okay.
Not always right, and sometimes I screw it up. But hey,
No, I think you were right on this one, and Jim and I both. It was almost like I felt like that day, if there was a big hat out in the middle of on the coffee table, we were tossing things into it. You came back and sort of synthesized all that and turned it into what I felt like was a really well-crafted song, and it's been met with a lot of really good responses. So we'll take a second and listen to that song. This is The Road to Jubilee.
Now I dream about the big house by the side of Laurel Creek. We're sitting there in a rocking chairs with the children at our feet. We've got a dog called Music and a mule to ride to town. That's all I ever wanted if I ever settled down. When a boy from Texarkana found a girl to take his name, thought the love they made and the vows they gave always would remain. It was a garden full of thorns, but the roses smelled so sweet. And what was bound together was bound to break at the hands of love's deceit. On the road to Jubilee, take me back in time before I left for Tennessee, living on memories. On the road to Jubilee, I keep a picture in my mind, and I'm counting down the days till they set me free, till I'm walking down the road to Jubilee. Now it's dark and cold and lonely inside these prison walls, and I'm not to blame for a dead man's crime, still I took the fall. I've lost so many hours that I know I'll never find. Now I count the days till I walk away, leave this all behind. On the road to Jubilee, take me back in time before I left for Tennessee, living on memories. On the road to Jubilee, I keep a picture in my mind, and I'm counting down the days till they set me free. Yeah. Across the cotton fields I hear the church bells ringing. Listen to the choir, hear the spiritual singing, like sweet magnolia blossoms in the spring, bringing me back again, bringing me back again. Living on memories. On the road to Jubilee, I keep a picture in my mind, and I'm counting down the days till they set me free. Walking down the road, walking down the road to Jubilee.
All right, so these other songs, there's some other songs on here that you and I co-wrote ultimately, but that I sort of started, and then getting back to that whole issue of song doctoring, you've got a chord vocabulary on the guitar that is far beyond anything that I'll ever have because I'm a recovering drummer, and I'm still in the process of learning. But that's something I've learned working with you is that you've got chords. You got chords out the ear, one day I asked you, I said, some of your chord shapes are sort of unorthodox and stuff I've never seen, and you said it's from working with a good keyboard player all these years. Maybe you could, I don't know, does that ring a bell?
Oh, it's my mantra.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, yeah, it's a totally. When I first started, I was a folk guitar player, folk blues guitar player, rock and roll folk blues, and I played your basic chord shapes and your basic chord progressions like so many rock and roll guitar players do. When I got with Daryl Hall and we began to write together, him being predominantly a keyboard player, and
a really good keyboard player.
He's a great keyboard player, and he plays chords that are unique, and he also has a very unique melodic sense over those chords, which is what he, the melodic choices he makes over the chords he plays are what makes him unique. So I began to first of all, I had to learn the chords he was playing. I would often stop and say, well, what are you doing there? Because it didn't sound like what, the chords that I had my access to. And he would say, oh, no, I'm taking the bass note and I'm transposing the bass note over the root chord. And then I started to understand that, and I began to figure out how I could actually physically finger those type of chord formations.
Right.
So it was really kind of learning to play like a piano player. And in doing so, I pay a lot of attention to the way the bass moves. And in fact, a lot of times before I choose a chord, I am already thinking about the bass movement, almost like a bass player would think. And then once I understand what I want the bass to do, I figure out what the chord underneath that bass note should be and how it should move from one to the other. So a lot of times, even when I'm writing, I will actually rather than play chords, I'll play just a bass line.
Uh-huh.
I'll sing over a bass line. And once I say, oh, that's cool, that's the bass line I want, now I'm going to put the chords underneath that bass line. Because the bass line has to move in a very, it has to move not only in a logical way, but in an emotionally, powerful way.
Right.
So anyway, that's kind of my technique, basically.
Okay. Well, let's take two or three of these and we'll play them for folks.
Sure.
One of them's called Laura, and it's the very first song on the album. The original title was Laura, You'll Never Be Mine, but that seemed a little long, so I shortened it. But I distinctly remember I had just a little three-chord thing that I'd worked up in a dadgad tuning, and you didn't mess with that too much, but you threw some other things in there. And I remember one of the things that you did, you may or may not remember this, but there was a place in there where you said it needs more words. It needs to get what you were going after. You said it needs another phrase there. And I said, but I don't have another phrase. And you said, go in the other room and write another phrase and come back. You said you can do that all day long. Go do it. So sure enough, I did it and came back, and it made all the difference. And the interesting thing for me, now that I hear these songs, I have no idea what they were like before we changed them.
Yeah, I know what you mean about exactly.
And I think it, and I said this a lot of times, working on these with you raises them to another level, because it's like I brought in, I don't know what the analogy would be, but some kind of thing that was sort of half-baked and had a good foundation, but what you brought it to another level without, pandering too much.
Thank you. Well, David, I think that what I learned in working is going back to, when we first started with The Head and the Heart, because I had heard some of your previous recordings,
uh-huh.
and I knew you had a great voice, and I knew you had a really cool guitar style, but I always felt that there was something lacking in the arrangements, and on your earlier recordings. So when we got together for The Head and the Heart, I think, in a lot of ways, I functioned more as an arranger for you. Taking your raw material and seeing how I could help with the arrangement ideas and where I could pull the best elements of what you already had without messing and destroying the spirit of what you had. That's a fine line to walk, and I think that's what good arrangers do. They keep the essence of the original idea intact, but then try to enhance it so that it can just make it better. That's what Aretha Martin did with our songs back in the early days of the 70s when we were recording. He was a consummate arranger. And so here, you had Daryl and I, two young songwriters, coming up with, what we thought were really good song ideas, and him taking them to another level with the element of arrangement. So that's always stuck in my mind. It's been a very important aspect of what I feel like, I can bring to the table.
Yeah. Well, let's listen to Laura.
Well, David, I just feel I need to be here to support you.
Jason, did you get that on film? Good. And you are, thank you.
Don't worry, I'll have plenty of time to make a fool of myself.
All right, so there's a character in the book who goes to live on this ranch and work for a guy, and not really something he wanted to do. That's what it worked back then. You worked for your neighbors. The old man brings this bride home, and she's beautiful, and she's about probably 5 years older than this kid. Then the old man goes away on a cattle drive for weeks on end. Nothing ever happens, but he's drawn to her, but he has to put that out of his mind. Anyway, this song is about that cognitive dissonance, I guess. Would it be cognitive at that point? No, it would be something else.
I think it's more of an affair of the heart.
Thank you. This is called Laura, You'll Never Be Mine. Sometimes I feel like you're reading my mind, and it scares me to death. It's like you broke into my dreams in the night, and I wake up with nothing left but a vague recollection of you. Pirate blue, sailing away with my heart in your hand. Days may go by, if I really try, I can almost forget your face. The next thing I know, that old west wind will blow, and I'm staring into space, remembering that look in your eyes, and how you cut me down to size, stealing my name, daring me to look away. Laura, you'll never be mine, though I look to the moon and the stars for a sign. You belong to another, the truth is unkind. Laura, Laura, you'll never be mine.
this unkind Flora, Flora, you'll never be mine.
All right, so that was Laura. The next cut I wanted to kind of talk about was called it's of What Was, Nothing Is Left, which is the title of my grandfather's book. And as I recall, that was going to be the name of the album until one day you and David Kalmusky, who is our engineer and co-producer extraordinaire, I might add. I rolled into town in Nashville. You said you guys were going to be mixing the record, and you'd been working on it without me, and so I came flying into town, rushed over there, and plopped in, and I said, how's it sounding, guys? And you both sort of turned to me and said, well, it sounded pretty good, but we've got some other news. And I said, what's that? And you said, we've changed the title of the record. And,
which is a really sleazy, by the way, which is a really sleazy thing to do to an artist.
Hey,
go ahead.
It made all the sense. Once you explained it, I said, I'm all ears. So there's a song called Beauty and Ruin, which became the title cut that Dana Cooper wrote with me. And we decided that Beauty and Ruin, I think, is a little more succinct and a little tighter thing to say and to put on an album cover or on a marquee if you ever get one. And the other one is that summed up the record better. But if What Was, Nothing Is Left is sort of, I'm looking here, let's see, that's a 6-minute, 4-second song. And that's the other thing I liked is that we didn't put ourselves in a box and say, well, these got to be 3 minutes and 9 seconds or any of that nonsense. We said, let's make really good songs and let them be what they are. So, which leads me to, if you were going to work on an album that was not this sort of record, would you worry about the length of the song as much these days as you used to?
Well, it would depend on the artist. It would depend on the artist and what type of audience the artist is trying to reach.
Yeah.
If it's a young pop singer, who's trying to get on Spotify and get on the Disney Channel, and yeah, absolutely, I would be conscious of the time of the record, the length of the record, how tight the arrangement is. But this was an artistic, an artistic project.
Yeah.
And it was all about the art of it, not the commerciality of it. I've always felt that, make the best music, make the best work, do the best work you can, and success will be will follow and be a result of the good work and the dedication of what you're doing. So no, there was no consideration of that at all. To me, Beauty and Ruin summed up the feeling of the music. The music was beautiful, and it had a very a deep sense of loss and sorrow, which of course came from the feel of the book. So it just felt right. I don't know. And plus, Beauty and Ruin, I think, is my favorite song on the record.
It's a pretty song. I got to give Dana credit on that one. Yeah.
Well, I would disagree with you. I think it's better than pretty. I think it's gorgeous. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
It is. Yeah, it really is. It's got an evocative feel. It feels old timey, but it feels modern. It feels timeless in a sense.
Yeah.
I love that record. I really like that song. That is without a doubt my favorite song.
Great. Well, I'll let Dana know. One of the things that people have said the same thing about that it's gorgeous. It's, I don't know, ethereal. It's just got a feel about it. And one of the things that we did on this record and the one before that we worked on was combining steel guitar and cello. I'll never forget the first day we were going to work on The Head and Heart. I knew what everybody was going to do. Then I saw this young guy with long hair and a cello wandering around, and I said, what's he going to play on? And you went, everything. And I went, okay. And lo and behold, I found a cello player right here in Delta County, Colorado, who'd spent 40 years in Nashville. So now I have a cello player, which is great because this material needs it. So let's take a listen to Of What Was, Nothing Is Left.
This house was a home when you came along. There was a rhyme, there was a reason, and a place I belonged. I knew just where I stood, those golden days were my own. Safe in the tall grass of the innocent seeds I had sown. Everything changed the day you crashed into my world. On a dust devil wind, a force of intention unfurled. My innocence shattered, my comfort and plans pushed aside. I let go of the reins, only long for the ride. Did you come here to teach me? Did you come here to learn? Did you set me on fire just to watch the place burn? Now you say it is all for the best. But what was, nothing is left. Oh, the want of a woman, the distraction of many a man. Angel, a savior, or a spirit who's made of the plains. Well, you broke all the rules and all the good hearts in your way. Maybe I shouldn't blame you for the part you felt you had to play. Did you come here to teach me? Did you come here to learn? Did you set me on fire just to watch the place burn? Now you tell me it's all for the best. Well, it was nothing is left. Oh, the call of the wild, of mother and child, nothing could stand in your way. I know right on the morrow, for all of the sorrow that would follow you all of your days. What's done is done. We can't live in the past. To hold back the sand on this soil is just too much to ask. These winds are relentless, demanding we change, blowing us on to our destiny, no matter the pain. Well, did you come here to teach me? Did you come here to learn? Did you set me on fire just to watch the place burn? Now you tell me it's all for the best. Well, it
All right, this brings us to Rise Up Again. And this one, as you know, wasn't directly pulled from the book, but it came to me and it was a gift, I think, during the period of time we were working on this. And long story short, I was in the hospital for emergency surgery and could very well have expired. And I had a very vivid dream about my father and grandfather. And a few weeks after I got out of the hospital, I sent you the bare bones of this song. And a couple of weeks later, I think you called and said, okay, I like this song, but, and I said, well, and I was very sort of, I don't know, protective of it because of where it came from. I said, but that was from my dream. And you said, yeah, well, I'm working on your dream a little bit here, so just bear with me. So sure enough, you had not just arranging wise, but lyric wise added some things, almost twists and turns in it that made it what people are actually say to me sound like an anthem to them. And especially right now, when we're in the middle of this pandemic thing, people have said just the idea that Rise Up Again, we gave it a feel that maybe I wouldn't have thought of to begin with. But your take on it?
Well, just looking at the title alone, "Rise Up Again," it sounds like a call to arms. It sounds like an anthem. So just knowing the title and knowing what you had originally, I felt that that you really didn't, perhaps you didn't envision that song as being so anthemic, because it was based on your dream, and dreams aren't always what, at least for me, they're not anthemic. They're usually reflective in a sense. So I think you were coming at it from a more, from the original dreamlike approach. Whereas I didn't have that dream, so all I had was what you brought to the table, and to me, it immediately screamed, "This is an anthem. This is something more powerful. This is something with more, less reflective, less dreamy, so to speak, and more strident and more powerful." So that's immediately what happened, and then you mentioned something about the extra words and coming up with extra lyrics. I think it has to do with an approach to singing that, you're such a good singer, and that's one of the, obviously one of the things that first appealed to me about what you do, because you're a great singer. But having that rhythmic vocal cadence and phrasing, I think really was what I wanted to push you more toward a rhythmic style of singing and less of a kind of a storyteller style singing. No, because I think there's room in your music for both.
Yeah, because
you do tell a story.
I completely get that now, and I learned that, and I've tried to pay attention to all those things and not just think of it, oh, he's just asking me to stick some more words in there. It wasn't about that at all, because you've always explained it to me on the spot. Here's why I want you to try this, and it's made me a better singer. It's made me, I think, a better writer, and hopefully I apply that in the right places. But well, let's listen to Rise Up Again.
Father came with me at night as I tossed my head on a fever bed, praying for the light. The elder spoke in poetry, words dancing round his head. Then the younger said, "You see, I was cut down when I was running at full speed, thinking everything I wanted was everything I need. Betting I was faster than any wicked wind that blew my way. You will rise up, you will go on, have gone before me spoke to me in dreams, telling me my race is not yet run. Their faces lost to history, circumstance and mystery, fading names and places gone to time. For those who were cut down, running at full speed, believing that their destiny was all they'll ever need, betting they were faster than any wicked wind that blew their way. You will rise up, you will go on. It's not your time, it's just one more storm. Though we're like leaves scattered to the wind, you will rise up again. Rise like a wild horse in a shadow box, waiting for the sun. I'll dream till my day comes around, and this crooked world won't beat me till I am truly done. I'm not ready for the burying ground. You will rise up, you will go on. It's not your time, it's just one more storm. We are like leaves scattered to the wind. You will rise up again. Rise up again. Rise up again. Any wicked wind that blew my way.
All right. This brings us to the last one on the record, the final cut on the CD. It didn't make it onto the vinyl record because there wasn't room. You only get about 22 minutes a side, so this one got left off. But it's called "I Don't Think I'll Stay Here," and this is one that I didn't think much of at the time, and it's inspired by the book. Not more than anything, I live in a small town, and I remember somebody, I don't know who it was, saying, "Yeah, I don't think I'm going to stick around here if she moves away," or something like that. And I went back into the book and I thought about these characters and how conflicted they all were, and how they disappointed one another, and so I sort of wove the two together. But this is a perfect example. This song was literally a 3-chord story song, and it became a rocker, So, and I don't know if you've listened to that one in a while, but maybe you have some reflections on that one. But that one to me, there's a modulation in it, which I never do in a song because I'm not a good enough guitar player to pull it off by myself, or at least I don't think I am. And but you changed that one dramatically. That wouldn't have existed.
Yeah, and also I think that had a lot, as I recall, and I might be wrong, but that had a lot to do with the players in the room. That had a lot to do with how they approached it, the energy that they brought to that song.
Yeah.
Which turned a kind of a mild rocker into a much more aggressive, kind of powerful, arrangement. And here again, letting these guys kind of being a supervisor, so to speak. You and I and David as producers, we're kind of the supervisors. You hire the best workers, and you hire the best players, and you let them do what they do. If something's really off base, you jump in. But if not, you just guide the process, and I think that's what happened on that song.
One star rises, one star falls. But I hit rock bottom about the time you heard the call. Now you're on your way up, and I'm on my way down. You don't need me around. There's nothing here to hold me but the past. Looks like even that is fading fast. Well, I don't think I'll stay here when you're gone. Too many memories and this place just feels wrong. Used to be my town, used to be my home, but I don't think I'll stay here when you're gone. Well, I watch with all the romance of some long lost cause, standing at the gate as you bow to their applause, with no real expectation of convincing you to stay. I guess this old dog has had his day. There's nothing here to hold me but the past. It looks like even that is fading fast. Well, I don't think I'll stay here when you're gone. Too many memories and this place just feels wrong. It used to be my town, used to be my home, but I don't think I'll stay here when you're gone. Tore down the big house, they closed down the dance hall too. Anything you might recognize is gone away of me and you. And landmarks and lifelines vanished in the haze. Seems that's the way those who stay. Nothing here to hold me but the past. Even that was fading fast. But I don't think I'll stay here when you're gone. Too many memories and this place just feels wrong. Used to be my town, used to be my home, but I don't think I'll stay here when you're gone. But I don't think I'll stay here when you're gone. When you're gone. Used to be my town, used to be my home. Hey, I don't think I'll stay here when you're gone. When you're gone.
That's the magic of being in the recording studio with the great players.
That's it. Well, I want to thank you for taking time today, and so I guess if we're going to keep up with your solo projects, that's at johnoates.com, and then and then we'll look for you with out on the road with Hall and Oates whenever you can get out there. I guess that'll be the.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still posting stuff on John Oates Official, my Instagram page.
Right.
I just actually, and this, my passion for cars and all things automotive.
Yes.
I just came up with a thing called Car Laboration, which is a play on words of, obviously. But I'm going to do a car-centric, motorsport-centric site where I'm going to talk about car culture and have interesting people talking about how they work together to either build cars or collect cars or various things like that. It's just a kind of a vanity project for myself.
Cool. Well, I like the logo. I don't know who came up with that, but I noticed that
That's my buddy Art Burrows over in Aspen, Colorado.
Oh yeah.
Graphic artist to the start.
There's a place down the road from me here, about 5 miles from town, and I think what they do is they take old Toyota Land Cruisers and restore them.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Well, it's all sorts of interesting people like that
Yeah.
that I've been running into over the years.
Cool.
So I'm going through my digital Rolodex, so to speak, and calling in some favors.
Well, it's funny how much time we have on our hands and how busy we make ourselves. So I'm glad that you were able to take some time. My best to Amy, and I'll be talking to you very soon, John Oates. Thanks.
Well, good. I'm glad Cindy's back, and I'm glad you guys are doing well, and hope we see you soon.
Talk to you soon. Thanks.
All right, David. Take care.